Okay, well, welcome to Be Inspired today. I have some wonderful guests who are here to help you to be inspired to hold on to positive expectations. It's none other than Henry and Vanessa Dotson. And I just thank God for them. You are here. Thank you for being my first guest on Be Inspired today. And I just believe God's going to use you mightily in a most special way to be a blessing to our audience. And Henry and Vanessa, you all are the authors of your new book, From Zion to a City of Hope, a Journey of Faith. That is a powerful, powerful title. Why don't you, first of all, go ahead and introduce yourselves and then talk about how the Lord inspired you to write your book.
Okay. Well, Cliff, let me first say that we're blessed to be here on your first. We didn't know it was your first, but I think that, this is another one of those divine appointments.
Yes.
So let me be the first to congratulate you on the start of your podcast with visitors. And my name is Henry Dotson, and I am an engineer by training, and I work as a consultant to the electric utility industry. We live in Pasadena, California, and we attend Zoe Christian Fellowship Church in Whittier.
And I'm Vanessa Foster Dotson. I also live in Pasadena. I am a computer scientist by career. And let's see, I'm from back east originally, from New Jersey. And we've been married 23 years.
Yes.
We've been
Praise God. Praise
years.
God.
So we have two adult children, Talia and Henry IV. And we have three grandchildren, and they are from Henry IV.
Yes, they live in Arizona. They just moved from Tempe, Arizona to Grande Vista, which is halfway between Phoenix and Tucson. So we haven't been out there yet, but we look forward to going because we have a grandson that we've never met in person because of COVID-19.
Yes, I understand that. I have my youngest granddaughter. I didn't see her for a little while as well because of COVID and the pandemic. And so we're blessed that, God is moving. He's clearing the atmosphere, we believe. And so let's go ahead and inspire our audience. Henry, you explained to me the story about how this attack came in your body. Share that with our audience. I don't want to try to tell your story. So tell your story how this happened.
Well, the attack occurred and I was unaware. I guess that's the first thing I would say, because I have multiple myeloma, which is a type of bone cancer, more specifically a blood cancer. And it doesn't have many symptoms, if any at all. And so the attack came and I was unaware. But I became aware of it because I was trying to help a friend move some of her belongings from a storage unit in downtown Los Angeles to Costa Mesa. And as I was taking a load out of the storage unit up the ramp of the U-Haul truck, the load shifted and I went out of balance, and I tried to straighten it back up, and in the process I pulled the muscles in my lower back. So I had to go see our family doctor because I was hurting pretty bad, because even though I pulled the muscles in my lower back when I was helping to get her items on the truck, I continued on with the trip and then helped them to get the items back off the truck and into her apartment, which was on a second floor of an apartment building with stairs. And so we were trying to move big furniture and things, and I hurt my back some more. So when we went to see our family doctor, she said, yes, you have pulled muscles in your lower back. As a matter of fact, it's going to take you about 3 months for your muscles to heal. And she said, as a matter of course, I'm just going to take some x-rays. And even though it wasn't a skeletal issue, she just, as a matter of course, took the x-rays. Well, it was in those x-rays that she saw something that she didn't think looked right. And that was the beginning of discovering that we had something more going on. And ultimately, about 2 weeks later, after she sent us for test after test and was giving us no diagnosis, we just went in and said, why are you giving us all these tests and you aren't giving us any diagnosis? And so she gave us a preliminary diagnosis of multiple myeloma. And I didn't know what that was. The only thing I'd ever heard about was any disease that ends in oma is probably not good. So I had no idea other than that. And she said, well, I think you have multiple myeloma. And I had to ask again, well, what's that? And she said, it's bone cancer. So that I recognized. And I asked her, well, how sure are you? And she said, I'm about 75% sure. So we asked, well, what does it take to be 100% sure? And she said, you need to go see an oncologist. So that's how it started in July of 2015, when I started to help her move. I actually pulled my muscles on June 7th, which happened to be my father's birthday. But in July was when she finally said, this is what I think it is, around July 8th.
Wow. That's an amazing story. I can imagine that it was a shock. Vanessa,
Yes.
when you first heard that, what went through your mind?
I think I was stunned. I just sat there like, okay, what is this? What do we do? Where do we go? How do we fix it? I was just stunned. And then eventually they told us that we needed to go to, see an oncologist, and we did that. And we ended up in Zion, Illinois. And it's a wild ride, really.
Yes, that's amazing. And I imagine that you were immediately praying. Both of you were praying.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Seeking God's healing.
Definitely.
Yes. When I first heard it, I was a little bit taken aback. I mean, I didn't know when my family doctor said, I think it's bone cancer. It was as if time just slowed down. It was like a minute and a half, if that, and it was as if everything that was important up to that moment ceased to be important. It didn't matter. It just really didn't matter. So I kind of had to try to process what she was saying, but I didn't get scared. I just was, like Vanessa said, a little stunned, and I thought about it. But what really surprised me was what actually did happen. And what did happen at that moment was all these memories came flooding back into my mind about sermons that I had heard at church. And those sermons were things like, well, we can praise God when everything is going good and we're sitting here in the pews, but what are you going to do when you get that bad report from the doctor that you're not expecting? Or, if you get what are you going to do then? And these thoughts were going through my mind, and I was thinking, well, gee, I'm in that moment now. Here I am at that point that they talked about.
They had to kick in.
Yeah, it was like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to get angry? Are you going to be fearful? Are you going to cry out? What are you going to do? And I had thought about this actually quite a bit a while ago. I'm not exactly sure why, but I had already thought about what I would do if I would get into that situation. And what I had thought about was I would not get angry or upset or in despair. And I certainly wasn't going to say, why me? And the reason why I'd come to that was the real question should not be, why me? The real question should be, why not me? Because the word says that it will rain on the just and the unjust. So just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're going to avoid difficult times in your life. And in James, it says that when the trials and tribulations come, it doesn't say if, it says when. So you know it's coming. So there's no need to be surprised. It's really, how are you going to respond to it? And in James, it says, count it all joy. So I'm not sure I was joyful at the time, but I certainly wasn't angry or upset. I just said, wow, it's happening to me.
Yeah, and at the same time, what I've learned throughout this is I've learned that I follow Henry more than I thought I did. In that, I'll tell anybody, the biggest thing that got him to this point and not on the other side is his attitude. And I saw his attitude, I saw his positiveness. And so it's like, okay, he's the one sick. If he's positive, how am I going to be negative? How am I going to get down? So I just had to support him the best I could. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
That is
So
so powerful. I really thank God that I've actually saw from afar the journey that you were taking. You had shared information on Facebook, Vanessa, and asking others to join in and pray with you all. And I'm so glad that I was able to join in with prayer
And
with
thank you.
you all,
yes.
and just show the solidarity of the body of Christ, especially those that we know from Zoe of Whittier and Bishop Ed and all of those who have stood with you. And it was just so powerful to see that. Tell us how did that strengthen your faith or encourage you, knowing that there were intercessors out there believing God with you?
That was awesome. Because we went to Zion. We were supposed to be there 6 days. We ended up there 33 days. And Zion is we went to the Cancer Treatment Center of America in Chicago. Zion is not Chicago. It's a small town outside of Chicago. And, I was just there alone while he was in the hospital, because as soon as we got there, they admitted him because he was so bad off. And so, and I'm not a big talker, if you haven't figured that out. I'm not a big talker. So I didn't want to take the time to explain to everybody what's going on and everything, because Henry knows a lot of people, and I didn't want to take the time. But more importantly, I wanted the prayer warriors to pray for my husband, because of his attitude from Jump Street. I took the attitude, we're going to get through this. So I don't know
Amen.
how. I do know how. God's going to help me get through it. And so God's going to get us through it. I'm going to ask people to pray. I'm going to let them know what specifically we need prayer for. So what I tried to do is every day just give them an update of this is what happened. Some days were good, some days were not so great. And it strengthened me as well, because, I was just watching as the people prayed, how he responded in the physical, because I was there. And it was awesome. Yeah, it definitely strengthened my faith.
And for me, it really did not, because in all honesty, I never read the posts until I started writing the book. So I had no idea. I mean, I knew they were going on, and I knew that there were prayers, and I could feel the spiritual power of the prayers, but I didn't know what she was writing. I was in the midst of the battle.
Yes.
So it didn't really hit me until I was writing the book. And just to kind of fast forward to how we got there, we tried to go to City of Hope in Duarte, which is near us. Our family doctor put in a referral, but none of the oncologists were available at the time. And she said that the earliest appointment she could get would be in about 12 days, just to see somebody. They wouldn't become my oncologist, but we might be able to get somebody to see me in 12 days. And something in my spirit said, you don't have 12 days to figure out whether or not you have cancer. That's not, you don't want to sit there waiting. You need to do something.
Right.
And so I reached out, and I really wasn't reaching out. I have a group that I meet weekly with in weekly web sessions as my colleagues. And I just mentioned in there the following day that I was not going to be able to attend the meetings because I had to figure out whether or not I had cancer. And one of my colleagues on the line, she said, well, if you want to find out quickly, you need to go to Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Chicago. And she's my mentor in my profession, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And to make her story short, she has now been in remission for years. And she went to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Chicago. And so something in my spirit said, you need to go where she went. So I did that. I said, okay, that's where we're going. And I told Vanessa that's where we're going. And she said, well, why do we have to go all the way to Chicago? I mean, there's USC, there's UCLA, there's Cedar Sinai, you name all these places that are right around here. Why do we have to go to Chicago for this? And I just told her, I said, I believe God told me that I need to go to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Chicago. And once I said that, Vanessa stopped any type of murmuring or pushback. She said, okay, when are we going? So that really, I think that made it a lot easier to just decide to go. And when we got there, like she said, it's really not in Chicago. Cancer Treatment Centers of America has 5 centers around the country. Um, One is in Phoenix, one's in Tulsa, one's in Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Chicago. And they are all called Cancer Treatment Centers of America city name. And it turns out that Cancer Treatment Centers of America Chicago was the first one, but it's just a brand name because it's not in the city of Chicago. And they chose that though because no one would know where it was if they said the actual city that it's in because it's so small. No one would recognize it. So it's just the closest major city. So we got there, and my health was deteriorating as we went. I was progressively getting weaker and hurting more mostly in my lower back. And by the time I got to the doctors, it was a struggle to get on the plane and get to Chicago. But once we got there, we had a 40-minute drive north of Chicago, and we wound up in this place that's about 3 miles south of the Wisconsin border. And when we finally got there, I said, well, where are we? I thought we were going to Chicago. And they said, well, that's the name of it, but it's actually in Zion. And
Wow.
so the spiritual significance of the name Zion wasn't lost on me. And I just thought, oh, I've come to Zion for my healing. And when I went to the doctors that following day, the admitting oncologist, he said, oh, yes, Mr. Dotson, you definitely have multiple myeloma. We looked at your blood results. We know exactly that's what you have. And I said, oh, well, it's good to get a real diagnosis. You know, now I know what I'm dealing with. And he said, but you're a very sick man. And I said, well, what do you mean? I felt bad, but I didn't feel like I was really sick. I just felt tired. And I felt like, you know, my back muscles, they were sore. He said, 90% of your marrow is cancerous and your kidneys have failed and you are anemic. And he said, it's a miracle that you survived the flight from Los Angeles to Chicago. He said you could have died from any of the side effects of multiple myeloma under that conditions, flying in a pressurized tube, you know, 4 hours. You could have had a heart attack, a stroke. You could have had anything that would have killed you, and we never would have gotten the diagnosis of multiple myeloma. So he said, we're not going to do this 6-day evaluation that we had planned on doing. We're just going to admit you right now. And so without much time to process what he said, 2 hours later, I was delirious on chemo.
Yeah, and Henry said he wasn't in pain, but that whole trip, the whole trip was crazy. But just getting from the airport to the hotel, he couldn't get in the limo. He couldn't bend his body to get in. We had to have somebody help him in. He couldn't, I mean, sorry if I tell, but he couldn't go to the bathroom by himself. A guy had to hold him up.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't lay down in the bed. It was difficult.
It was difficult getting there. The chauffeur, because they had a chauffeured car that would pick you up at the airport, and they drove you to Zion. And by the time we got there to the hotel, it was late, and so our appointment was the next day. So when we checked into the hotel, the chauffeur, I had to go use the bathroom. The chauffeur had to hold me up while I used the urinal. I couldn't even stand enough to do that. So he had to hold me in place so I wouldn't fall down. And then I was able to get to the hotel room. And when I looked at that bed, even though I wanted to lay down, I said, if I lay down, I know I'm not getting up. I mean, it just hurts too much. So I wound up spending that first night in the chair. I just pulled back the recliner and stayed there because I knew that in the morning I could just stand up. I wouldn't have to get up out of bed. So it was a fitful night. It was a fitful night.
Yeah. Wow. Another thing at the airport, because unfortunately we were running late. And at the airport, I gave Henry, I think it was like a lunch bag or something to hold.
This was at LAX.
At LAX, before we even got there. And he could not even hold that lunch bag. I mean, he had it. I think you dropped it.
It fell. Yeah, it had to go through the scanner,
right,
to make sure there was nothing in it. And when it came off the belt, and she had gone ahead to try to hold the gate, and I just had to carry this thing and get there, and it fell off the belt. And when I went to bent down to pick it up, And it was like those things you see in the movie. You've been on like, oh, I couldn't get back up. I was like, oh my God, I'm stuck. So they had to find a wheelchair to put me in so that they could at least get me sitting down. And of course, Vanessa was ahead waiting for me at the gate. And of course, the gate was the last gate. And you have to walk out the security. It was the last gate at the terminal.
So your faith was being tested to the ultimate.
Where is he?
And I left him standing up, and I couldn't find him when I went back. Yeah. Somebody had wheeled him somewhere. Yeah. It was. Yeah. But we got there. We got there. That's the main thing. We got there. Yeah. It was a little crazy, but we got there. So.
What a journey. What a journey. A few things that stand out to me was when you said that Vanessa was in agreement, and especially when it looks so crazy, you kind of reminds me of Joseph and Mary. It said, hey, we gotta leave here. We gotta go to another place and have you on the mule and everything, but that power of agreement, and then for God to send others to help you along the way. That's powerful. Sharing what the chauffeur did, from another man helping another man in a situation like that. That takes, the love of God, and so God was intersecting in every area, including the wheelchair, everything. But you told me something, Henry, about the city of not the City of Hope, but Zion, the hospital, and you said that it was founded by a gentleman, and so tell us that story about the gentleman that founded the hospital.
Yes, I was curious, because when I found out that the city name was Zion, as I said before, the biblical significance of it wasn't lost on me. So I was just curious to find out, what's this all about? And so I did some research on the city of Zion, and it turns out that the city of Zion was founded in 1900 by a Scottish pastor named Dowie. And at the time, he was renowned for having the spiritual gift of healing. He had healed some local, some celebrities of the time, like he had healed Abraham Lincoln's niece and Wild Bill Cody's this. And so he had some little notoriety about his ability to heal. And he was in Chicago when he was doing that. And he said that he heard a word from God that said he was to go and build a city where people could come to get their healing. And so he followed what God said, and he founded the city of Zion. And if you go there, many of the streets of Zion have biblical names. And so when I did that research, I realized that I had come to Zion, the place where God lives, to be saved. And so it really felt to me like this was the right place to go. And that was part of that word that I heard from my colleague that said, you need to go to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Chicago. And that's where God was speaking through her to me to say, this is where I'm going to save you. You've got to go to Zion. And I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was in Chicago. So I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the title, From Zion to a City of Hope, it just makes so much sense. And a journey of faith. Such a powerful story. Let's talk about a little bit more about now the recovery process. We've heard how, the hardest parts, and obviously there have been other times where you've had to go through difficult times, but during the recovery process, just talk about that a little bit.
Well, the first thing that they had to do was save my life. I mean, that was when we got there, they said that my kidneys had failed. And so the first thing they do, if you've ever been in a life-threatening crisis situation, the term they use is triage. You've got to figure out what's the thing we got to treat right away so that we can then worry about the lesser things later. And so my doctor said, the first thing we have to treat is your kidney failure. Because if we don't do that, you won't have to worry about multiple myeloma. Kidney failure will kill you. And my mother died of kidney failure, and she was on dialysis for 3 years, and she just got tired and couldn't take it anymore. So she said, I'm going to stop dialysis. And so what the doctors told us is that if you have a person who his kidneys have failed and they don't take dialysis, then the longest anyone has survived is 21 days. So my kidneys had already failed, and they didn't know when they had failed, but I was in that 21-day window. So they said, well, the first thing we got to do is deal with your kidneys. So they were able to restore my kidneys, and I won't go into all the details about that, but they were able to restore my kidneys without having to go into dialysis. And then the second thing is that now we can focus on your multiple myeloma. So they started giving me the chemotherapy that got me to a place where I responded well to it. So those 33 days in Zion was really about stopping me from dying and getting me into a shape where I could go back home. And so there were a lot of things that happened there that I won't go into all the details. They're in the book, but we did eventually come back to LA. And that's when we were able to be admitted to City of Hope, that found an oncologist who had now room on his schedule after that time. And so that's where the title From Zion to a City of Hope came from, is that those were the two places, the main medical centers where I received my treatments. And the saving of my life took place in Zion. And then the ultimate healing came in the City of Hope. And so it was there that I received the stem cell transplant, which was to remove all of the cancerous marrow from my bones and replace it with my own stem cells, which grew back. I grew a whole new marrow. And that took place on February 25th of 2016. And I also, the thing that my family doctor saw that looked strange was when she looked at the x-rays, my spine didn't look correct, didn't look right. And what had actually happened was my T7 vertebrae, which is the vertebrae, if you look at your body and where your breastbone is, where it comes together, directly behind that is your T7 vertebrae. The multiple myeloma had caused that T7 vertebrae to completely collapse. So it was crushed, because one of the side effects of multiple myeloma is it makes your bones weak. And so my upper body couldn't take that particular vertebrae couldn't take the weight of my upper body. So it was crushed. And I am 3 inches shorter today than I was before multiple myeloma. And so one of the things they had to do at City of Hope was I had to have back surgery where they replaced my T7 vertebrae with a titanium T7 vertebrae. And that was a 6-hour surgery where they had to open up my back. And at the end, it was a 6-hour surgery. I wound up with 36 staples in my back to close up the opening. And my neurologist that did the surgery, when I asked him, when he first went into surgery, he said, "No, this is a dangerous surgery. You could wind up, if everything doesn't go right, and there's plenty of opportunity for it not to, you could either be killed because if we made a mistake and you're there because your spinal cord is exposed. So for 6 hours. So if they were to have done something wrong and hit the wrong nerve, I could have been killed or paralyzed or being exposed for 6 hours. There was many opportunities for something wrong to happen. And so when I came out of surgery, I asked him, well, how did it go? And he said, and I appreciated him because he was very frank. He didn't hold anything back. He said, well, Mr. Dotson, in these types of surgeries, we set the bar pretty low for what we call a success. So the first thing is, you woke up. Okay. He said, that's a good thing.
That was one. That was
one.
most important part.
You woke up. He said, the second thing is, you can talk. He said, okay.
Wow.
And he said, and the third thing is, you can wiggle your toes. So everything after that is gravy. So you did great. That was all he said. You woke up, you could talk, and you can wiggle your toes. So
I can say this: you're an excellent orator. You speak very well, my brother, and God has anointed you, and so such a powerful testimony.